Tuesday, May 12th, and again we are talking about the CNC Cafe in Castle Rock. And when places like that are ordered to shut down, what is actually supposed to make sure that restaurants or businesses follow the rules? Well, 9 News reporter Nelson Garcia talked with 3 attorneys about how these situations usually play out.
When someone openly defies a public health order like continuing to serve dine-in customers even after being ordered to shut down, what can really happen? 9 News legal analyst Whitney Traylor explains.
If it ultimately came down to that, they could go and literally put, chains on the doors.
But what if, like in Weld County, the local public health agency won't force the restaurant to close? That's when Attorney General Phil Weiser steps in.
Insofar as a county may decide we're not going to enforce a public health order, at that point, the state public health department, working with our office, could come into play.
Weiser says the state can issue a cease and desist order for these places to shut down.
What then would happen is if such an order were issued and yet still the business violated the order, they would be in contempt of court. And that would start to trigger sanctions.
Sanctions like fines. And if people are still being served.
For those rare cases where just brazen, lawless activity was happening, there is criminal sanctions that could be pursued by a district attorney.
A person like George Brockler. But he doesn't really want to punish people like the owners of the CNC Cafe in Castle Rock.
I'm very sensitive to the use of the criminal justice system to enforce these orders. But as long as these are laws on the books, and this is a tool in my toolbox, even though I'll use it sparingly and in the most remote circumstances, I will use it where I think it is necessary.
The most likely answer, they all say, if push comes to shove, these matters will end up in front of a judge.
And the way they start, Nelson, is really with these kind of issues. So somebody says, you shouldn't shut me down, and they get fined and they get shut down for 30 days.
I'm very troubled by the expansive powers that the governor and the heads of these local health departments have in an emergency. But that isn't enough to simply say I'm going to disregard them or ignore them.
If people believe that what is being done is unconstitutional, they're free to challenge these rules in the courts.
Until then, they say the law is the law. Nelson Garcia, 9 News.
And of course, despite serving customers after being ordered to shut down yesterday, the restaurant in Castle Rock was closed for business today. The CNC Cafe in Castle Rock has received several $1,000s in public funds as well. We learned today the restaurant was one of among dozens of small businesses in the town of Castle Rock to get a hardship grant because of COVID-19. Part of the terms of receiving the grant were that businesses had to abide by local and state health guidelines. Coming up on Next with Kyle Clark at 6 o'clock tonight, our Jeremy Hahola speaks with Castle Rock's mayor about the CNC Cafe disobeying the state order after receiving that grant money. And at Castle Rock today, some supporters of CNC Cafe were actually taping money to the windows of the restaurant. One of the owners showed up with a grill and then hosted a barbecue for supporters out on the patio. Governor Polis says his office is working with Tri-County Health to suspend the restaurant's license for a minimum of 30 days. The cafe's owners defied public health orders when opening its dining room to customers over the last 2 days.